All right, welcome back to another episode of Travel Ball Talk. I'm your host, Rich Prado, owner of Play in School. Today we're heading up to the Minneapolis, Minnesota area to visit with Brian Bambenek, owner, founder of Great Lakes Academy. Brian, how you doing, man?
I'm well, Rich. Thanks for having me, man.
Before we start, I want to sort of direct traffic. GreatLakesBaseball.us is the website. GreatLakesBaseball.us. I do such a poor job of telling people where they can connect with the guests. The other spot to connect with both Brian and the Great Lakes Baseball is on Twitter over at MN for Minnesota, MN_Lumberjacks, and then personally over at Brian_Bambenek. So that's a little bit of housekeeping. The other piece of housekeeping is we had, and we'll probably talk about him as well as the program, we had Mike Ponsole on the call last fall. Mike is the head coach for Minnesota Postgrad, which happens to be kind of under your umbrella, correct?
That is correct. Yep, Mike runs our college program.
Why don't we just start there, give a little recap of what the Minnesota Postgrad is, and then we'll sort of go in in a bunch of different directions. But since he was on the call, let's just start with who he is and what that is.
I love it. Yeah. So our postgrad program is really geared towards seniors in high school, college athletes that looking to play college baseball and either don't have an offer or don't have an opportunity to play college baseball or don't have the offer that they're looking for. And so a variety of reasons, we get athletes that are from tiny towns, didn't get exposure. We get athletes that were hurt their senior year. So, had TJ going in my senior year, haven't thrown a pitch in, 365 days, didn't play as a senior or junior, have zero exposure. I'm 145 pounds coming out of high school. And so I can't physically play at the next level. And we get a lot of those athletes. They come in, they live with us for a school year. So our athletes are actually moving in on campus right now. And they'll start next week and they'll be here till the middle of May. And again, anytime you're doing something for 9 months, they go 6 days a week. Naturally, you just get bigger, stronger, faster, you get more polished. And we send kids off. And this is our 5th class. I think we have over 50 scholarship baseball players. We got 15 to 20 Division I kids we've passed along. So that's really what it's geared for.
Yeah.
We also get kids that we actually have had a couple kids in the last couple of years where have had Division II offers, but parents just didn't feel like mentally or emotionally they were ready to go on to the next level. And so because of our structure, because of our environment, they actually chose us over a college program. And so the athletes meet every day with our organization. 9 a.m. we have team meeting. We do a lot of things like cooking. So every Monday night they have cooking classes, teaching them how to make meals appropriately. And I know you probably got into this with Mike. I don't get too far in the weeds, but we just do a lot more than just baseball because, again, these kids are 18. It's the first time living in a dorm by themselves. We try and kind of bridge that gap between being independent and leaving mom and dad's nest for the first time.
Yeah, we definitely don't need to go too far in the weeds on that. I'm a big fan of the concept. If anybody is curious to hear that episode, it's at playinschool.com/Ponsole, PONSOLLE. And I've actually featured a bunch of post-grad programs from all different pockets of the country. It really is a neat concept. It's not for everybody, but for the ones that it makes sense for, what a great opportunity. Now that folds into, just from a business perspective. Listen, I've looked at these. I think it's such a great idea. And I've kind of thought through it. One of the things that makes it a wonderful add-on to what you're doing or this sort of being under your umbrella is you have the facility, right? Because that's one of the, the first things you got to figure out is like, where are we going to work out? So let's kind of like go back to the beginning, talk about the facility. And even if you want to go, back farther and give a little bit of, your street cred and how you got into this whole whole industry. That'd be nice to hear.
Yeah, so before I cut to the facility, just real quickly, my background is underwhelming, so I'll spend 15 seconds. Played college baseball. I'm actually from a tiny town, St. Charles, 2,500 people, one stoplight. Moved up to the Minneapolis area and played baseball at Augsburg College, a Division III school up here. It was a 4-year starter. As soon as I got done, I was teaching, and when I was teaching, my skipper at the time reached out and asked me to come back and coach. So came back for a couple of years and coached and got that bug. And then honestly, it started from there. So I was teaching at a elementary school in the North Metro, coaching college baseball, and then the Minnesota Twins community program reached out, asked if I'd be willing to start running some of their camps. So my first summer, I spent 5 weeks on the road with Rod Carew, Tony Oliva, Paul Molitor, and just a bunch of big leaguers that I had no business being with, and basically running their base running programs at these camps around the Midwest. So we're traveling to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, Fargo, North Dakota. We're down in Ames, Iowa, and just spending, weeks and weeks with these guys, just fly on the wall, listening to conversations that they're having. Started to develop some philosophies on hitting, and so got back, started doing some private lessons. One lesson turned into 6, which turned into 12, and next thing you know, I had a client base. And from there, I had a guy who was like, "You should run teams." Started running teams, ended up on the Cape Cod with Coach Mike Roberts. Coached on the Cape for a year with Coach Roberts. Yeah, and he is still a dear friend and a mentor and kind of my second father. And so did that, and have since kind of the rest kind of taken care of itself. So I left education in 2012 and have been doing this ever since. It's been a while.
And that'd be the dog. Let me pause there. Hang on. Sorry about that, listeners. It was probably pretty loud. Hang on. And we're back. I tell you what, not a lot of guys get to sort of start their careers in coaching, hanging out with, Hall of Fame big league guys, and then going to the Cape to hang around with, Hall of Fame college guys. That's pretty. Do you call that lucky? What do you call that?
Yeah, all those things. The amount of times that I would call my parents my first 4 years in the industry, just like pinch moments, we call them. I would call them and just say, "You're not going to believe it, but," and they'd be like, "What did you do now?" And I was like, "Tony Oliva, Rod Carew, Paul Molitor, just got done having a beer with," and they're like, "How does this happen?" I'm a believer in Jesus Christ, so I know that's a huge part. He has for sure paved the way for me and given me tons of opportunities. The one thing I tell a lot of people, and I've had my executive director got to go on the Cape, it's surprising to me how many people that have been through the ringer, that have done bigger and better things than me, are genuinely just looking for people that want to listen. And I'm a fairly good listener. And so I feel like I tell that to a lot of younger kids when I do some speaking at some colleges. We always tend to want to talk because that we can tell people how much we know. But when I was younger, it was so much of just asking a lot of questions, just being willing to listen and shut up and be a fly on the wall. And so, I remember we had my high school coach came to a camp I was running. I don't know, it's probably 22, 23. And, Rod Carew's over there in the batting cage giving me a headlock and messing around with me. He texts me. He's like, "You just had Rod Carew put you in a headlock." I'm like, "Yeah, it's like my mentor." He's like, "In what world do you live in?" I don't know. I'm very, very, very blessed. And then Coach Roberts has been like that for me ever since I left the Cape in 2014. Him and I talk 3-4 times a year, and the first thing he always asks is "How can I serve you? What can I do for you?" And again, has no business worrying about me. He's got bigger and better things to worry about. But yeah, just some really, really special people that have poured in and tried to fill me up.
That's awesome, incredible, so wild. You wouldn't even be able to make something like that up. I don't think if you're 22, 23-year-old coach and you tell your guys you were in the dorms with just a couple years before that who you're rubbing elbows
Correct.
with, it doesn't make sense.
No.
So like many coaches, you start with one lesson, probably the son of some guy who was friends with your dad type of situation.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's pretty predictable. Where were you doing those? And then all of a sudden, when you got to 10 of them, when you got to 20 of them, were you in the same spot? Like when did you begin to make little incremental moves?
Yeah, so my principal still doesn't know us at the time, but I was actually training out of our elementary gym, which was like a really, really, I would use the term gym super loosely, like cafeteria-esque, and it had a drop-down divider. And so I would drop down the divider, and I would bring in my own portable L-screen, set it up, and just front toss, throw BP. But we have to use chemicals, obviously, because nothing was caged in.
Yeah.
And so, like you talk about makeshift, it was underwhelming. Like I still look back, I don't know why somebody paid me $5 to do a lesson, let alone what they were paying me at the time. But yeah, so then went from that to 10, and honestly, I didn't actually get out of there until I started my first organization, which was back in 2012 with one of my good buddies, Eric Lovedahl, who actually connected me with Minnesota Twins. And we ended up opening a facility right next to my school, 2 cages. I think it was like 3,000 or 4,000 square feet, a super, super underwhelming place. And we were there for probably a year, and it just exploded. And so we ended up moving 1 year later to a place that had like 4 or 5 cages. And we were there for 2 years, and same thing, like just couldn't keep up with demand, like just drowning. I was doing, 3 till 10 or 11 p.m. I was single at the time, so I'm working, 16, 17, 18-hour days, like literally just trying to be able to service our clients. And then we ended up moving over to the east side where we're at right now in our headquarters, which now has 10 full-size cages. It's 15,000 square feet, so it was a pretty rapid ascension.
But it's such a good lesson to hopefully there's one guy who's listening who's interested in this space or thinking about getting into the lesson business, into the facility business, and you don't have to start with 10,000 square feet. It's okay to start with 1 cage. You know what I mean? Like I know guys who run nice little side hustles out of their backyard or a public park to get started. And then you move at the speed of demand, because the worst thing you can do is open a 10,000 square feet facility when you don't have demand for a 10,000 square feet facility.
Correct. Yeah, and that's such a great example, because again, I think sometimes we get caught up in like the glitz and glamour of it. We're like, I'm going to build this mega facility, and you're like, you don't have clients. Like like when you have fixed costs, like that changes your whole model. Like going to the local high school that has a batting cage, there's no overhead. Like you can't lose. The only thing you do is you go 100% margin. And so, I know I got into the business side a little bit, but I tell people all the time, like, hey, I'm thinking about, I just had one of my alumni, his sister wants to get into the softball side. She was like, here's what I'm thinking. And I said, like, don't do that. Like the last thing you need is more risk. Like make it 100% margin.
Yes.
Create more breathing room. And then if you're in a year ago, I love this, because that's the other thing is you understand how much time you put in. People look at me right now as a 40-year-old and they're like, you're living the dream. And I tell them, like, if you saw me my first 3 years, I was the farthest thing, like 17-hour days, finding fast food on the way home, whatever was open, which is usually McDonald's.
Yeah.
Putting $2 cheeseburgers in me, going to bed, and up at 6 to rinse and repeat. Like that was not even close to the dream. A lot of people, I think, if you do it for 2 years and you're like, I'm still in, awesome. You'll be set.
Yeah. And there's no shame in going to the facility that already exists, knocking on the door and saying, "Hey, can I rent a cage from you? You know,
No, for sure.
can we come up with something where I'm bringing in clients? Maybe we're splitting the lesson fee, whatever, before you go and sign your name to a 5-year commercial lease."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's
Amen.
like
Amen.
I was talking to people who run a facility the other day, and they described that they feel like they're at capacity and they're ready to like open another huge space. And I'm like, well, before you do that, like that's awesome. First of all, congratulations. But if you tried raising your prices, like, and just see, like raise your prices a little bit, you
Mm-hmm.
know,
Yeah,
because what you might find out, I mean, just as an example, if you double your prices and lose half your customers, you're making the same money and working half as much. And I'm not encouraging anybody to double
no,
their prices
no,
necessarily, but you might not need a second location yet.
correct.
You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah.
um, so you eventually open up the space, and you still have that space. And now, fast forward, before we hit record, you've got three different spaces. Can you
Correct.
talk about like your growth into multiple locations?
Yeah. So when we were on the north side, obviously our client base started there, so that's really where we built up our following. When we moved to the east side to be able to find a space that fit us, the demographics worked a little bit better with what we were trying to do big picture. We had some relationships out there that we really enjoyed from an association, a youth level. So when we moved out there, of course, the base that which we had built was now commuting, from the north side of the metro to the east side of the metro, and obviously didn't love that. Um, but obviously, we're still playing with numbers, trying to figure out what you just talked about. How do we make this work? So we were end up able to build what we call our satellite sites, and which is again, I think, a model that we really believe in. Parents will always choose service, but they also want convenience. And so you see this in other sectors. Churches right now, the mega churches are actually doing this, which is I want to be able to be in your backyard so you can drive on a Sunday morning 15 minutes. But we'll put those all around your metro area so you can all be within 15 minutes, and you don't have to make an hour commute to church, because when push comes to shove, you're probably not showing up on Sunday if it's an hour. And so we've built a little bit of that model. So the one on the north side it's a small 5,000 square foot facility. It allows us to run a lot of our programming similar to what we do on the east side. We have a weight room in there. And then the same thing down in Rochester. We have, 4 or 5 cages. We have a full weight room. We're able to do all the things, all the technologies in all 3 facilities. And our biggest challenge is, again, just making sure our staff is, the model and everything looks identical, because if you go into one building, it needs to feel and look the exact same if you went into our headquarters and on the east side.
Yeah, I love that. You're basically running a zone defense in the Minneapolis area, so that
Yes,
that you can reach just about any family who's in any corner. I make the argument all the time that that parents, no matter whether we're talking baseball or anything else, they don't necessarily want the cheapest, but they want the best. And then once that box gets checked, I'm amazed personally with myself how much I value, and we as a society then value convenience. I think about our the school choice we made for our son who just started second grade, and when we were looking, I told people where we were looking, and they said, "Oh, there's this other place you should consider." And I looked on the website. The place, it's like identical. The difference was the flow of traffic in the morning and the evening. One was very convenient, one was not. And
Mm-hmm.
convenience helps. So having options for people in your community is really smart. Are you sharing staff between those? Like, does one hitting coach
Yeah,
go from one to
yep,
the other to the other? Ooh,
correct. Yeah,
interesting.
yep, yeah. So we will have, obviously the philosophy is the same. And so we do a high performance model. So every Tuesday, our staff sits down, we go through our athletes and basically just address our performance team starts. They go through any injuries, anything that we need to know about. They build the model for the week. So, hey, we can't bury our athletes today in the hitting, in the cages because we're going to bury them in the weight room, or vice versa. Hey, we have a heavy day on drive line today, so in the weight room it needs to be super light. We're going to go light Tuesday, Wednesday this week. If offensively or pitchers, if you want to go a little bit more aggressive, these are the days you can do it. And then we go into talking about individual athletes. So, hey, I'm working with so-and-so right now. What are you guys seeing? As a staff, the offensive guys or the pitchers are talking, here's what I think, here's what he's missing. And then that product is then delivered to the athlete, regardless if it's, our senior hitting instructor, if it's one of our kind of back end guys, that same message is being relayed to that athlete.
That's very good. That level of communication is highly recommended for anybody that's listening. I should have asked this question a little sooner. So the team side of the Great Lakes Academy is called the Lumberjacks. That's basically your team brand. Is the facility a private club just for Lumberjacks, or is it open to the public no matter if you're a Lumberjack or not?
No. So we take everybody. We have time slots. So like in the winter, our first 3 hours are, we call them our elite hitting, which is our, kind of our top end guys. They'll have the facility to themselves. But nope, we open up to we serve all the masses.
And I would venture a guess that that's how 90% of facilities are, but there's still 10% that kind of work like private clubs. So I wanted to clarify. Yeah. So another Lumberjack question, and maybe we'll talk a little bit travel ball. This podcast called Travel Ball Talk, not facility talk. So the Lumberjacks. Now I'm curious because you've got this. It's almost like one sort of organization that just has 3 separate physical locations. Does that same approach apply to the teams? Let me be more specific. Is there a Lumberjacks Woodbury team and a Lumberjacks Arden Hills team, or do you just hit it from sort of the organizational level, so you're just one team?
Correct. Yeah. Yep. So we just hit it from one team. So those are their training locations, and again, that's the convenience piece. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, the tournaments are going to be where we are at, and everybody will be there regardless. So we don't get to choose if it's in Georgia, if it's in Hoover, if it's in Cary, if it's in Nashville. We have to obviously go to those tournaments. So so the facilities are training locations, and then the teams are just one team. All of our athletes in one pool, build out rosters, build out teams.
That's smart.
Send them to their location.
No, that's smart. That's wonderful. Now let's talk. You brought up schedules. You guys are, no offense, you're not necessarily in, the baseball hotbed of the country,
to say the least.
Hockey maybe.
Oh yeah.
Hey, speaking of hockey, the post grad thing has been a thing in hockey forever.
Juniors. Yep.
Juniors, right? This thing in the baseball space probably wasn't a big surprise to you when you saw it start to pick up steam.
No. And when the guy that came in with the idea approach, he literally just said, "We're going to do juniors for baseball." And I was like, "That's brilliant." It's the only difference is the true juniors. And I don't know how much you're aware of that model. It's actually, they call it juniors because you leave after junior year. So your junior year after you play high school, you get selected to be on one of the USA teams. You go out to Michigan. You don't play. You're done. Like your high school career, you leave town as a junior in high school, and you finish your high school degree online at those programs. So that's why the term juniors comes from.
Gotcha. And do they often do a second year of that? So they would basically do their senior year as well as a post grad year. So they're really 2 years away from high school before entering college.
Exactly, yeah. And we don't have any high school players. We take kids after they have graduated.
For the Minnesota post grad.
Yeah,
MPG
exactly.
with Ponsol.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's get back to travel baseball in Minneapolis. I'm assuming there's a ton of time indoors. It's pretty cold, pretty snowy. But then, school finally ends. What is the mix of in town events, showcases, tournaments, regional events, and national events where you got to get on a plane or get on a car or van and drive, 15 hours to Atlanta or 18 hours or whatever
Yeah.
it is. What's that?
Yeah.
What's that blend look like? How are you thinking about the schedule on a given summer?
Yep. So obviously we have different levels for our National 1 and National 2. We'll have a little bit more of a intense travel schedule. They usually spend between 25 out of 30 days on the road in the summer. So they'll leave. Obviously July is the big month. So like our guys got back. I think they left on the 3rd of July this year and got back on the 24th of July. So they were gone for almost 3 full weeks this year. And that's pretty much the norm for our national teams. We're down in Hoover, we're down in Georgia, we're down in Nashville, down in over in Indy. But it ranges. There's not a ton of in-state as far as exposure and stuff like that. There are some, like at the end of the year, the clubs in the state will run kind of an event where all of us will play each other just to get some games. And for some of the local Division II and Division III schools, will provide a platform. But most of it is PG has a complex down in Iowa that we go to, once a year. Milwaukee has Grand Park that runs an event with PBR. We're obviously out in Indy. Grand Park in Indy with PBR as well, and then obviously the big ones: Georgia, PBR National, Hoover, PG, and then Nashville Music City are kind of the big ones that we get to. So.
Yeah, that requires a sort of an extra level of commitment, planning, effort, cost. not just from you and the players, also mom and dad as well.
Oh yeah. Logistically, it is our executive director Paul Weiner, who runs all of our logistics, is a wizard. He was at Creighton University for 3 years and is unbelievable. The amount of, there's times where we'll have 200 hotel rooms, 35 15 passenger vans.
Oh my God!
That'll be a weekend for us, right? And to coordinate all of those pieces, flights, hotel rooms, 15 passenger vans, it's wild. And Paul does it. It's amazing. Yeah. Yep.
I've had a lot of Midwest guys on this call.
Okay.
Guys like R.J. Fergus with the hitters, guys like Nelson Gord, guys like Greg Reinhardt, all these
big hitters,
all these guys that are, and there seems to be, from talking to some of you guys from that this region, there's like a different approach, a little different vibe. I compare. Listen, I'm in Richmond, Virginia, and if a local team's going to play in Atlanta, and you got 18 guys on the team, there's probably 16 families that are going to go. And what I picked up from some of these other guys is, okay, cool. Mom and dad are going to stay home and live their life and go to work. Correct. And we'll see you next week. So, is that where, the 15 passenger vans come into play for you guys, is literally to transport these guys from A to B?
Yeah. So we do everything in team vans and team rooms. So the parents are, So, almost every trip for us all summer, every team is drop your athlete off at the facility at whatever time we're leaving, and then we'll see when we get back. And obviously, parents are welcome. We have great parents that do make some of the trips, but no, it's 2 coaches, 2 15 passenger vans, and the summer on the road. It's smelly. It's gross. We do laundry.
You beat me to the punch on that one. I was about to say you can almost smell that through the through the radio,
yeah,
man.
yeah. It gets pretty rough. Like end of July, I mean, we get out of the vans and you almost want to condemn the vans. It's like we just got to send this thing to. No person should get in this thing for at least a year. But yeah, it's and again, what comes from it. When we talk a lot about this with the parents when we have our summer meetings in May with our families, is it's just a unique brotherhood. Like what the kids experience, and you know this, like playing college baseball, you get this, but like our kids lose their entire summer of being at the beach and chasing girls and doing the things that, you know, most high school kids are doing. Mm-hmm. And they say every year, like, this was the best experience of my life. Like they'll come back as college kids and just say like, I'll never have a summer like that. And in the minute, right, when you're in it, I was in it last year. I was gone for 17 days with a newborn and my wife. I'm trying to fly her to some like cities to meet us. Mm-hmm. But I look back now and it's the fondest memories I have of just a special group of kids, like doing laundry and getting ice cream in between loads and like just sitting with the kids and being in a space where there's no distractions and no social media. And we're just talking life and being able to pour into these kids and mentor them. Like I don't enjoy the 12-hour, you know, rides after a championship game that we lost in Cincinnati, and I got to make a 13-hour commute back overnight to get home so that they can get to insert next obligation. Yeah. But man, I look back and I'm like, those are special, special memories.
For sure. You know, I always, my wife grew up going to camp. Okay, like summer camp.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, baseball players don't do that. That doesn't exist. However, the modern format of travel baseball can almost mirror the type of experience she had. The way that, and it's different, man. I'm telling you, these teams from here, from Richmond or wherever, it really is a lot still parent dependent, which is great. Man, my dad never missed a game. He would have never missed, never. So that's great. But the sort of the culture that from talking to enough of the guys from your region, it's just like, hey, let's go as a team, and that's important. It's, you know, it's part of our value system to do this. That is almost summer camp like. It's a cool thing. What you just described is, man, no cell phones and like hanging around each other for long periods of time together. It's no different than my niece who just came back from 2 weeks of camp up in the mountains with no cell phone. You know, it's pretty cool. Pretty cool. And let me ask you, this is a super kind of detailed logistical or business question that maybe one person cares about. But do you all rent those vans, or do you own a bunch of vans and you just use them every single summer?
We rent them, so we have a contract with the organization up here, and we've become great friends with these guys because they take care of us. But everything is rented. Yeah.
On the one hand, you know, it's not something you own. On the other hand, it sure is nice to turn the keys over and get a fresh one next week.
Yeah, so we've crunched the numbers and we've looked at it. Obviously, there's some, you know, depreciation that we're losing out on. My biggest thing is what you just said, right? Which is, I know how, and I hope he's not listening to this podcast, but I know how we treat the vans. We do our best, but at the end of the day, we'll put a ton of miles on them in a short period of time. They get destroyed. Like the last thing I want to do is get back and then, you know, service a vehicle. Like that's not my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
I try to stay in
my that's lane. His wheelhouse. That's his profession, and he's going to clean it, maintain it, change the oil, rotate the tires. And
I want nothing to do with that.
No, of course. Of course. No, that makes total sense. But it was, you know, something I kind of nerd out on. You know, those type of small details.
Yeah, I love that stuff. I just the mechanics side of things, I can barely put gas in my car, so it stops there.
I'm the same way. I know where to take it to change the oil. That's about it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
All right, listen, I'm watching the clock. I want to be, cognizant of the rest of your day. So I want to just kind of pick a couple of these standards. I call it the regular questions I like to ask a lot of people. I'm gonna pick one that's sort of a quickie, and then one that might open up a lot of discussion. So, not
Love it.
saying we're not hanging up in the next minute, and I'm not in a rush. But I want to definitely make sure I hit. The first one is my question about books, movies, websites. What's something, a resource that you find yourself recommending to the people in your lives, the coaches, the parents, the players? Is there a book or resource, that website, whatever, a movie even?
Yeah, I'm actually not a movie guy. My wife hates it. I want nothing to do with movies. I'm a big reader. I read a ton. I would say there's a lot of books that I would refer, and without boring your audience, the one probably really geared towards this conversation would be the Matheny Manifesto, which again
Oh, so
is,
good.
is an old book. Yeah,
No, so
I
good.
that honestly, Rich, probably changed the way. So I read that book when I just started my this organization, Great Lakes, and really kind of changed. Like I was an educator by trade, so it's always been about kids and pouring into kids, but kind of really changed our standard with our organization. And so we have like a code of conduct that every year I just got done speaking on because our fall season just kicked off to our parents. Our parents and athletes sign a code of conduct, and it's really based off the Matheny Manifesto. I think it's an amazing book. Every time I speak, I tell the people I'm speaking with, like if you will read one book this year as a baseball coach or a youth baseball coach, you have to read that. I think Mike just does an amazing job of pouring into like what sport was created for, and I think sometimes we lose that in competition, and all the things that come with it is we forget what sport was created for, which is to have a whole bunch of fun, and then learn just some really special life skills that are hard to teach in a desk. And so I would say that for sure is a book that has really impacted our organization and my vision for what we try to do within our organization.
Wonderful. That for sure is one of the best, and I'm actually was trying. I've got a bunch of like free PDFs on my website, and one is a is 5 book recommendations for all baseball lovers. And I put this PDF together probably a decade ago at this point, and I'm pretty sure I listed that one on there.
Awesome.
Yeah, because
What are the other ones you have on there if you remember? Because if I haven't read them, I got to
so
go.
see, and I literally haven't looked at this document in so long, and so I before my child came, I was a pretty voracious reader.
Yeah,
And so some of the books that I think are on it is the Augie Garrido book.
of course.
I believe the book about the Dominican Republic. I think it's called Eastern Stars.
Okay.
And by the way,
I've
I
not read that.
appreciate you asking me about the same question right back to me. It's awesome because I usually don't get to share these. Another one was called Drive in the Gap. It was by a journalist who, as a kid, by coincidence, ended up. How's this story go? It was a Roberto Clemente story, and
Okay.
it's a short read. If you've ever been in the bookstore that has notepads like Moleskines, or there's a little notepad company. This book was published on one of those little notepads. The book literally fits in your back pocket. It's like a tiny little book, and
Yeah.
and so the pages are tiny. It probably has 100 pages total, and you sit down and read it in one sitting, and um, it's a story about the father-son relationship. Also ties in Roberto Clemente. It's a baseball book. It's a relationship, and it'll make you tear up a little bit. But I also used to put out a ton of just general content, like I used to do like a video blog type of thing, and for a long
Yeah.
time I had a kind of like a book of the month situation going on,
Yeah.
and I was gonna let's see if I can find some of the books that I recommended on that just a real quick list that might it was kind of a virtual book club, if you will. The Talent Code
Yeah. Yeah.
was a big
Awesome. That's
one.
a really great book. Yeah.
A Seth Godin book, Purple Cow.
I've not read that.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's really a lesson about kind of figuring out a way to be different. I think is the best succinct way of describing it. There's a book called Coach, Lessons in the Game of Life by Michael Lewis. Michael Lewis is the guy that wrote Moneyball. Michael Lewis is the guy that wrote The Big Short, and he wrote this. That was a quick read that was really good. Coach by Michael Lewis. So lots of
all of these have since been ordered on my Amazon. Thank you.
Let me. I want to make sure I don't miss. Let me see. I don't want to miss anything from my top 5. I just downloaded I downloaded from my own website the PDF, so which is pretty funny. Let me see if I missed one. Okay, so the Augie Garrido book, number 1, Life is Yours to Win is the title of that one. The Matheny Manifesto, number 2, Eastern Stars. Oh, here's one that I didn't mention that was a big book at the time. The Arm by Jeff Passan. Did you read that one? That was it.
I have not, but that's on my executive director's bookshelf. Jeff Passan works for ESPN.
Yeah. That made Jeff Passan go like, I mean, I think people knew who he was, but that book made him, I would say, famous. And the final book, I'm glad I got the full title and author. You need to get this one. It's called A Drive into the Gap. So I had the title right, and it's by an author named Kevin Guilfoyle, Guilfoile. And if you go to the website, adriveintothegap.com, I think is where you can get it. I don't even know if you can get it on Amazon. I think everybody.
It is indeed on Amazon. I got it.
That's one of those books.
$15.88.
Is it really? Oh,
so that's the best thing.
And then I didn't think we were going to talk books this long, but now you got me going. I did a book giveaway a couple years ago. Okay. I bought probably 100 books, and
holy smokes!
And I gave them away in a contest. And man, I don't even have the full list anymore. I don't think I have the list, but there's a reason I bring that up. You can buy almost any book. Okay, it wasn't 100 books. It was 31 books. You can buy these books on Amazon sometimes for as little as a penny, and you pay. Like people have these books and they're giving them away, and you might spend $3 on shipping. I don't remember that full list. I've got a short list of those. The Soul of Baseball, that needs to go on everybody's list. I mean, this thing was kind of all over the place. It wasn't just baseball books. It was, Good to Great. It was Make Your Bed. It was The Old Man and the Sea. It was Obstacle is the Way, just to name a few. But golly, man, so this kind of makes me, when you have kids running around the house, you very rarely get that deep couch, like where you're really sitting back. And when you have. Life changes when you have. I am now trying to return to that, but even now it's 5 pages at a time. It's not 5 chapters at a time. Okay, we talk books enough. I appreciate you giving me a second to talk books, but because most people don't, nor do I expect them to. But I want to ask one final question. This may take us down many different rabbit holes. It might not, but it might. What is one change that you think could be made to travel baseball that would have the biggest positive impact?
Yeah, that question is you're right, because we should get down the rabbit hole so I don't get myself in trouble. There are so many different places that I think we miss as adults running youth sports and more importantly, like structured youth sports. I think one of the things that I really struggle with is just how we tolerate adults acting like kids. And that's something that I've had a conversation with a lot of guys about, and mainly in like the tournament industry. Because whether we like it or not, and the tournament industry controls the narrative, right? Like PG, PBR, their decision on how they run things will ultimately drive where youth sports is going. And so I say that because we run a tournament up here every year. It's 195 to 215 teams. And I get to control that narrative based on me allowing people to play in our tournament or not. And I don't let people play in our tournament that are knuckleheads, that don't do it the right way, that are inappropriate with their language, that are inappropriate the way they treat umpires. And I see it all the time. And again, I'm not looking for church league softball. I'm not looking for us to sit around and, sing Kumbaya to each other. But I think some of the things you see on social media with, coaches getting in fights and guys screaming at umpires, and some of this, again, the things you see on social media, that comes from us tolerating it, right? Like us allowing those people to do those things. And so I think that would be something I wish we did a better job of.
So that's the problem. Okay, you've identified a very important problem to discuss.
Yep.
Is there a 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 bullet point solution?
I love it. Yeah, great. Call me out on that. It's so good. I think it starts with those people. They don't play, right? So to my point with our tournament, I don't let a certain organization play in our tournament because I don't want to deal with every week umpire association calling me and going, "Hey, just so you know, we kicked out these 2 coaches. Here's what they said. Here's what they did." Yep. So the problem is solved now because you're not playing with them. And so now they get to choose, right? So now their parents go, "Hey, how come we don't get to play in that tournament?" Well, we're not allowed because we got kicked out 3 years in a row.
Yeah.
Okay. Why are you getting kicked out? Because we do this. We F-bomb 14-year-old umpires. We, threaten other kids on other teams. We throw at kids' heads. Like, well, what happens now is free market. Parents go, "Cool, we can't play in the major tournaments. We'll go find a different organization to play in that does it right." And the bad people get eliminated from
you're essentially blacklisting them from the events, and then the parents are going to want to move on. The problem is those bad apples can also move on, and so they get back into the into Gen Pop. So that one's tough to really tough to sort of
for sure. And you
solve.
have clearly thought about this more than I have. That's the one thing. And again, I know I'm not giving great solutions. I really struggle with that. I really struggle watching, 45, 50-year-old men act like 8-year-olds. And again, like a lot of these guys, before the game, 3 hours after the game are like good dudes. And I hear the same thing all the time. Like, I get, when I do my speaking engagements, I know off the air we were talking about this. I get a lot of guys come up to me and they're like, I really wish I had heard you when I was 25 or 30 because I have lost perspective. I ruined my kid didn't play the sport in high school because, the way I acted when he was, 12.
Yeah.
I think, but the one thing I hear is like, I'm just competitive. And when I tell people all the time, like, my family doesn't want to play cards with me when I was 10 because I was quote unquote too competitive. Like, I'll try to beat you in Uno. I'll try to beat you in, walking to get the mail. Like, I'll race my wife to get the mail right now. Like, I'm as competitive as anybody, but being competitive and being a jerk are not the same thing. Like, those are two separate things. And I think we have to stop allowing people to be like, well, he's just competitive. Like, no, he's a jerk. Like, he doesn't have perspective.
Yeah. I'll add to it if you allow me to.
I absolutely want your theory.
There was a topic that was brought up on Twitter recently, I believe by my friend Zan Barksdale, catching guru, all around great guy. he's a great follow on Twitter. He likes to pose questions, just and his audience gets in there and debates, and he's a sharp dude, and I think he's the one who brought up this topic regarding alcohol at these events.
Yeah,
and some people fell on the side of it should not be allowed. Some people fell on the side of, dude, it's legal. This is America. These people are on vacation. Like lighten up. And, I kind of fall somewhere in between. If you're running an event, you can sell $8 beers at the concession stand. That comes into it. It's a factor. But also, we've all seen the videos of drunk parents getting in fights in the stands, getting in fights on the field, and it definitely is a subject that needs to be considered. I don't know what the two biggest players in this field, PBR and Perfect Game. I don't know what they do. I don't care. I mean, I kind of care, but it's something to think about.
For sure, yeah. So, if I can pick a little bit with you, I know you're the host. You're running this thing.
No, let's chop it up.
Where do you? Yeah. So where do you get into? Where do you get into the alcohol? Like, I know you said you're kind of in the middle. If I said, got to give me something like,
well, first of all,
yes or no.
If I'm going to be held on a black and white yes or no, I'm going no. I'm going. Let's eliminate it. When I'm at a field, first of all, I'm there in a business capacity, right? So right out the gate, and so are all your coaches, and so are all your employees. I would have a hard rule against anybody associated with an organization, even if PBR allows your coach to go buy beer. If I'm you, I'm making that up.
There's no shot. Yeah,
an absolute
no
way. It's just. And first of all, I mean, like I think our culture has normalized to children a lot of questionable subjects: alcohol, drugs, gambling, pornography. And you know what? If we can go to a weekend baseball tournament and not have a bunch of drunks stumbling around, cool. I think it's going to feel that much more positive. But I see the other side. The guy who just drove 12 hours and he's going to take his 1 week of vacation a year to go to Atlanta, and he wants to have a beer at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Like, I can't fault that guy. So
it's unfortunate that we can't have both, right? And I know, again, there are a bunch of organizations, so I hate to occupy all your time with talking about the 1%ers, right? Unfortunately, those are the people that, are on social media. And you had I can't remember who was on. I was listening to one of your podcasts a couple months ago, and they were talking about, like, it's such a few people that give travel baseball a really bad name, and it's because the one social media post that goes viral, and then the news grabs it and goes, "Steve, look at these crazy parents being crazy," and you're like, "We have 300 families in our organization, and maybe one that's a little bit like intense. That gives you 299 families that are genuinely pouring into their kids and just being amazing role models and wanting their kids. Like, it's unfortunate that we can't."
But also, it does need to be discussed, thought about, even policed, because the reality is, I mean, like, to play a baseball game, you need 2 baseball teams. You also need umpires, and
you already see that,
and you already see it. People don't want to do it. Who wants to be abused by a coach or a player or a mom or a dad? And it's tough, but it's sort of an important part of the game. And then you run out the good ones, and then you're left with really bad ones, and that just gets
Yeah.
everybody more
And
fired up.
I was just gonna say, and then you've created this monster.
Yeah.
And I talk with, one of the biggest things we get with associations now is with umpires is they're saying the issue is not right now, it's in 3 years, because the kids that were doing it 3-4 years ago are all never coming back, because when they were trying to umpire at 15, 16, 17, got screamed at, yelled at, and we're like, why would anybody ever do this? And so we're going to see it in 3 or 4 years when there won't be an umpire between 25 and 30.
There'll be, and there's going to be a wave of umps that retire. And then
exactly, and no backfill.
There's no backfill. There's no training program happening. Yeah, man, it's a big topic. I'm glad you brought it up, and I think here's what I try to do. Sometimes people will give me really good ideas on how to improve travel baseball, and what I do is I turn around and say, okay, so do it. Like, do it. But like the way that you can do it is make sure that the people who are wearing your logo and underneath of your brand are not the ones starting fights at ball games and not the ones chirping at umps. So hopefully, sounds like you already are doing that and doing a good job. But yeah, if I was going to turn it around and sort of give your advice back to you, that's what I would say. And it sounds like you're already sort of taking that advice. So let me ask you. We'll wrap it up here. But do you have any sort of final thoughts or comments that, advice, anything that you would want to tell a coach or a parent or kid who's still listening to us 56 minutes into this thing?
No, I mean, I really appreciate the platform that you're creating, and to be secular and be separated from a certain organization, to be able to just pour into the baseball community, I think is really, really outstanding. And having a chance to go back and listen to some of the guests and some of the things that you provide is outstanding. And so I appreciate you doing that and being a part of growing the game and the baseball organization. I don't know if I have any, profound words. I think one of the things that we talked about earlier was just for people that want to get into this or aspiring to get into this, the ability to be patient and trust the process. We talk a lot with our athletes is in a society and in a culture right now that is so instantaneous. Like, our athletes it's stacked up against them because their whole life, all they've known is within 10 to 15 seconds, they have a response or an answer to everything. Oh. And you and I didn't grow up like that. There was times where if I called my buddy at 10 a.m. in the morning and he wasn't home because he had left or he went to somewhere, I didn't hear from him till the following day. Yeah. Because he would get home at 7, and then his mom would say, hey, so-and-so called for you. And then he would call me back the next day and say, hey, what's up? Yeah. Well, now, like, that doesn't happen, right? And so it's not their fault, but that's the structure they've grown up in. So then when we tell them, hey, you have to lift weights for 9 months before, you'll start to see some benefits to your game. They're like, 9 months? I was going to give you 9 days. Yeah. Like,
9 minutes. No. I was going to give you 9 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's so hard. And we talk about this a ton in our organization, which is like, if you don't love the word process, I think is becoming like a little bit cliche. Yeah. So we really break it down to like, you have to love what you're doing. Like, if you don't come in here going like, I just love to be with my boys and get after it and grind and sweat, like, it will never be worth it. No matter where you go, you'll look back and go, that was a waste of my time. And on the other side, if you love it and you come here and you're like, this is my family, this is what I do, like, I love these people, no matter what you get, it won't matter because everything will be worth it. Like, whether you play D3, whether you play, Major League, we had a couple guys in the bigs right now, and those guys, they loved the process. And so when they were in Double-A, they weren't miserable because they loved showing up and going to work. And so I trying to break it down for younger kids and even like, kids in the workforce that are just getting in, like, for them to understand, like, do something you love, because if you're only chasing that next carrot, that next ladder, you'll never be filled. Like, you won't be able to get high enough. And so you'll always be like, I need more, instead of, I'm like loving this place. If it's assistant to the assistant director, I love being that guy because I get to do these 4 things. Or if it's, I'm like, when I was on the Cape, I was BP thrower and fungal swinger 6 hours a day. Like, I just love that. Like, that was, I couldn't feel my arm after day 3. And for the next 44 days, I threw 6 hours of beats, had Tommy John 3 times, and was like, it won't get better than this.
You had Tommy John 3 times from throwing BP?
No, not actually, but it felt like I should.
Oh.
Yeah. Because we threw literally 3-4 hours of beats every single day.
Holy moly.
But again, my point was just being able to like enjoy that. And I think where they're currently at and where our current, generation of kids, again, they didn't create this monster. They're just in it. And technology has created it for them, but trying to get them to pull back a little bit and go, guys, things don't happen in seconds. They don't happen in minutes. Like, great things happen in decades. They happen in so understand that. And that's why we talk about like finding things that you love so that you're not miserable every day of your life. Only the one day you get a promotion, or only the one day you made the sale. Like, that will never fill you up.
Love it. Can't add anything to it. Wouldn't want to subtract anything from it. Brian, this has been great. Don't hang up, but I'm going to end the call. I'm going to end the recording right there. Thank you so much for your time today.
You bet, man. I really appreciate you giving me this platform. And again, thank you for what you do. And to consider me as I'm going to be for sure the lowest view you've ever had, but or listens you've ever had. But man, it's I appreciate it. It's really, really cool.
All right, hang on one more second.